I'm your host, Kaylee, and this is Rebel Wellness. Welcome to Rebel Wellness, the go-to podcast for realigning and revitalizing your health and well-being. I'm your host, Kaylee, also known as Coach Kales. I'm a holistic health educator, certified nutritionist, and fitness professional of nearly a decade. I'm stoked to have you with us. You just joined a community of amazing souls who are ready to break free from the confines of the often outdated and confusing health advice all around us. Living in a world overwhelmed by quick fix diets and unrealistic body standards, us rebels stand for change. If you're like me, you're exhausted with the confusion and polarization plaguing the social media health scene. My mission is to empower you to step beyond today's diet culture, adopting a holistic health approach paired with the foundations of science for lasting, well-rounded wellness. Through teaching you how to tune in and embrace your mind, body, and soul, we'll reject one-size-fits-all solutions, realigning you on a better path that honors your unique needs and values. With new episodes weekly, this podcast is your sanctuary for deep wellness exploration, featuring expert advice, real-life stories, and a true commitment to your growth. Your journey to better health and simplicity in life begins now. Let's jump right in. And I know a lot of you might be kind of surprised that I'm having this take on this medication, but I have... Hey, what's up? Hello, my rebel soul. I am so glad that you are tuning in to today's chat. This episode, honestly, was an unexpected one because I didn't think I would do several episodes on this Ozempic topic, but it's actually become a really nuanced situation, and I could not help but share my thoughts on this topic because I've had so many really amazing conversations around the semaglutide kind of frenzy that's going on right now. And I feel like there's a lot of thoughts and conversations discussed online that are very stereotypical, polarizing. Either there's people who are for it, there's obviously going to be a lot of more generic Western medicine doctors that are going to be kind of definitely pushing for it. And then you get a lot of Western medicine doctors that are like, stop using it for things that are not diabetes. And then you get like other health professionals kind of chiming in their thoughts where they kind of either regurgitate the same stuff or they feel like, it's not natural and, blah, blah, blah. And as you guys know, I mean, if you're new to the podcast, welcome. This is a really good taste of a little bit of back end Kales about my thoughts, and when I kind of have these episodes where I'm just kind of riffing off a really passionate topic in the moment. But with that said, this is my take on another aspect of it because this is a really raw, personal conversation that I've actually had with a few of my closest friends and a few of my clients, within the last year or so. And this conversation has come up quite a bit of time. And I'm not talking about just one conversation in this. I'm pulling some of the meat and potatoes, like the best parts of some of these conversations that I think you might personally benefit from if you are somebody who clicked on this title because you are trying to decide whether or not a semaglutide is good for you, and you want to also see all the different angles, And I know and I understand that this episode will not be for everyone. And, this is my personal take, personally and professionally, because I have done crazy amounts of deep dives into the science, the updated science. If you haven't already, I have 2 other prior episodes to this one. Episode 23 is the biggest one. That's the longest one, where it's kind of all things you would want to know about semaglutides. And then 62 is my follow-up, where I talk about some of the updated risks and warning signs that have kind of come out through the government, as well as just, other takes on it. And I talk a little bit about kind of some of what I'm going to talk about today, but today we're really going to swim around in some of the heart-to-heart concept that I talked about in 62, because there's a lot that I don't think is discussed, like I was kind of saying before. And I really want you to feel heard and seen if any of what I say today resonates with you, because I think there is a huge missing area, or conversation rather, when it comes to determining if Ozempic or a semaglutide in general is right for you. And the way that you might need to, like, I'm going to give you some questions to ask yourself if you are teetering on what decision to make, because if part of you really feels like, I really want to try this med, and then other part of you is like, I don't know, I don't think it's right for me, or I don't think it's going to be safe, or whatever, you're thinking of. I hope that what I talk about today kind of helps you jog better quality questions so that you can make a decision for yourself. I'm not going to give you your decision. This is something that I want you to just digest and think critically for yourself. And always reminder, this is not medical advice at all. This is a conversation where I want you to just think about alternative concepts, or maybe I finally bring to light something that you haven't been able to put into words. So I really hope that this chat, at least some of it, resonates with you. And if it doesn't, just leave it behind. It's totally okay. But I think honestly, for a lot of you, it totally might. And first, I do also want to say that today's chat is more specifically for anyone listening who is above 45% body fat, has existed at that body fat percentage for more than 5 to 10 years, maybe your entire adulthood, maybe your entire life, If you don't know, I'm more so speaking to the person who has a lot of gynoid, so belly fat, high risk area. Maybe you have larger breasts, larger belly, larger booty, larger thighs, just carrying a lot of body fat around your vital organs. This conversation is for you. And if you are not diabetic, if you are not somebody who is just, in a generally healthy body fat percentage, like under the 40% zone, and you're just kind of like, I want to lose a little more and get extra skinny. This is not a conversation for you. Sorry. This could be a conversation that has good questions or things for you to think about, but this is not a conversation for you. But also the category of female dealing with PCOS, this is a conversation for you. A lot of the times, people who are dealing with body fat percentages above 45%, and if you are struggling with dominantly belly fat, that plus PCOS, that usually goes hand in hand, because a lot of stubborn and excessive belly fat coincides with insulin resistance, which is a pre-diabetic or diabetic concern. However, we are finding that people are not necessarily becoming diabetic, but they are getting PCOS, because PCOS has now been deemed insulin resistance disease, where it's kind of like quote unquote diabetes at the ovaries, they're kind of calling it. And so those symptoms will go kind of hand in hand, and they often are very challenging to lose body fat naturally. And it's something that I think a lot of people are completely ignoring. But I've definitely seen more conversations of it come up, especially on like Health Talk or Instagram and all that jazz, where people are starting to recognize that there's actually something to using semaglutides for those ladies with PCOS who are having a massively hard time losing body fat consistently. And also as a mechanism of managing insulin resistance, semaglutides have also, weirdly enough, helped a lot of PCOS women, or just women who have been existing in a morbidly obese body fat percentage. So, the upwards of 40-45%. Again, medical term, not using it as any sort of slander. And they are finding they are actually getting fertile finally after utilizing a semaglutide for several months or so. So there's a lot of things that our lifestyles nowadays in our culture that have been really negative for fertility, because we are, very stressed. Our lifestyles are very stressful. We're not necessarily doing a lot of the most healthful habits every day, with a lot of screen time, desk work, Netflix, sedentaryism, Starbucks, lots of sugar, fast food, DoorDash, there's a lot of things that are not supportive of fertility when it comes down to it, unfortunately. And it can be way understated how challenging it is for somebody who has never been modeled health and fitness habits, like foundational health and fitness habits, and don't have a lot of motivation because of their surroundings, their environment. There's a whole huge multitude of reasons, economic status, culture, a lot of things that I think are being missed in the conversations, where no, it's not just so easy to be like, why don't you just work out and go on walks and cook yourself food? Not everybody has access to that, nor have they been modeled that. So it's not second nature. It takes a lot more effort and work, unfortunately. And that's all to say, like, ultimately, the best thing we can do for future generations is start them younger and breaking that bad cycle. But this conversation is for those of us who are far outside of going backwards at all. We can only move forward, right? And so it's really important to think about that for yourself. I'm going to talk more about that here in a second, but I do just want to make sure that people know that it's not quite so easy for everyone. And especially if you're somebody who, again, has been existing above 45% body fat for 5 to 10 or 20 years, and maybe you've been struggling with PCOS or any of those different major hormonal imbalances, this conversation is really important for you to think about when you're trying to decide, should you take the leap and try out a semaglutide to help manage your body fat percentage? Because there's so much that you could benefit from that I'll talk about. There's always going to be risks, but I'm going to bring some things into light for you here a little bit later in this chat. So stay through this whole conversation. I think you're going to really enjoy all of it, but I really want you to feel as though you are considered for a lot of different reasons and different angles. So I'm going to try to talk about it as much as possible because I think it's really important. But I'd like to invite you to come join me in my community on social media. At Kaylee Loren is the flagship coaching page. Come check that one out. I've got a lot of great stuff coming in. I've kind of embraced a rebirth in who I really am and what I really uniquely bring to the table as a certified nutritionist, former fitness professional. I'm still a fitness professional, but it's not my only thing like it used to be back in the day. And there's just so much that I am working to show you guys on the side of my approach to health and fitness and wellness in general, because I am a really realistic kind of fitness coach and health coach compared to other people, because I would say that I just really I don't jam with like the polarization or just acting like you need to be perfect and that you're like the picture of health, because like I always like to say YOLO, but also YOLO, and meaning you only live once, but you do only live once. So it's like you want to find that harmony between how do you best take care of yourself 80, 85, 90% of the time, depending on your goals. And then how do you also just embrace life and do hobbies that you really enjoy? Like I'm a huge foodie and I'm like a real foodie. I'm not the kind of person who wants to go to some kitschy place that was featured on a famous Instagram page that has friggin' piece of cake on top of a milkshake. Like that's not foodie. That's just kind of gluttonous and ridiculous. Like those are people who chase like outrageous food items, not necessarily ones that actually taste good. A lot of people with social media have muddied the waters of what it means to be a foodie. Like I truly appreciate the art of food and the just how beautiful it can be when people spend their life mastering the art of croissants or like different pastries that are really technically complicated, or just beautifully composed meals at like a set menu type place. There's a whole bunch of different things that I think is amazing about food. And I absolutely live my healthiest life so that I can go and do those things and indulge on that stuff and go travel and try new things without any concern about my health or gaining 10 pounds on my vacation or whatever. So all that to say, that's just a little bit about me and what I'm really interested and passionate about. And you can come join the community and follow along and learn a lot of my little life hacks and advice on my at Kaylee Loren page. We also are building our podcast Instagram at Rebel Wellness Podcast. And that's a place where I usually like to share what's on deck for the podcast to come. I also like to get your guys' input and topic requests or any questions that you'd like to ask, because it's fun to get a little customization on what I talk about on this podcast, or guests that I have, that kind of stuff is great. So come join those communities on Instagram if you want to be a part of it, and go to my website, coachkels.com, for a ton of amazing resources. I have free guides on there for you. I also just launched my first big nutrition course that's self-paced, that is available on my page as well. And if anything, I highly recommend you join our newsletter. It's an amazing wellness newsletter, one time a month, and I've got it jam-packed with a lot of good stuff, from nutrition, fitness, mindset, self-love, all that good stuff, book recommendations of the month, yada yada. Definitely sign up for that newsletter. There is no spam. Okay, with all that said, let's jump into this chat. All right, I'm going to come out the gate swinging with this one, so bear with me. Remember, this is my personal and professional take on this specific topic, so if you don't agree, it's totally okay. But perhaps you actually might see my position in a new light after how I describe it, okay? So one of the worst things that I am hearing so many people say all the time, that maybe if I was honest, maybe in the beginning, like back in the summer of 2023, I might have had this same opinion. But now I definitely don't, okay? The opinion is Ozempic and semaglutides are stealing from diabetics when you're taking it for weight loss reasons and vanity. Let's break this down. Yes, to some extent, absolutely. That's why I said in the beginning, if you're under 40% or 45% body fat percentage, you absolutely can make those changes through your lifestyle. And, you probably should take the natural route if you are in that zone. It should be easier for you, and it also will just be more natural, therefore a little more healthy going that route. And you just for sure do not need to utilize such an expensive medication to stimulate fat loss fast, especially because you would be in a consideration where perhaps you're not actually in a unhealthy body fat percentage zone, and you could put yourself at higher risk because the med is not really designed for you. It's the Kim Kardashians of the world. Like, you didn't need it. Okay. You really didn't. Sorry if you were trying to fit into Marilyn Monroe's dress. I'm not going to throw shade, but I'm throwing shade. A lot of people know I'm just not a big fan of that family. Sorry, not sorry. I will say that when people say that and they just group in anyone who's not a diabetic, they really do not know the struggles and just the life of so many other people. I've had clients and just friends, it's just everybody in my circle who have literally done all of the natural way, quote unquote, and not moved the needle at all. And I'm not talking like they're binging on weekends and not telling me. Like, my circle is like raw and honest with me, because I am not going to judge them, and I just want their best outcome no matter what. So we're down in the trenches together if we're talking about this stuff or working on it together. And it's a combination of, for sure, lifestyle. A lot of people, their work-life balance is imbalanced. But realistically, not only does it like really bring them passion and it's like their life's work, but at the same time, if it's like kids and stuff and a variety of other things that are just natural stressors, you can't tell them to stop doing that. And especially in an economy like now, especially if it has something that's tied to their livelihood, you cannot tell somebody to stop working so much or whatever, realistically, okay? And so there's a whole spectrum of scenarios that essentially will really push the female body into a PCOS or massive hormone imbalance zone that then makes it really, really tough to mobilize fat. Not only that, but also we have a lot of science now that there's been more generations of people in the upwards of 45% plus obesity zone, where their body literally fights them losing significant fat. Like, straight up, that is what happens, because no matter what, your body wants to maintain its homeostasis and its mass, essentially. So that's why people hit plateaus when they do start to lose weight, because your metabolism matches, blah, blah, blah. episode 65. If you want to learn about metabolism, that's actually a really good chat. That was last Sunday's episode. That your environment internally will just fight to establish a homeostasis and constantly fight you. Literally, they have tested and found that when people are losing significant amounts of body fat, when they've been at a larger mass for a long period of time, their body shoots the ghrelin hormone, which is your hunger hormone, high, like very high, to be like, no, we're losing for some reason. We're no longer the same mass we've been for a very long time. I don't know what's going on, but you need to eat because this isn't matching. And a lot of like bro science guys and people who just literally have never been in the trenches with the situation or researched it, because it is more modern research, they will say that that's not true and this or that, blah, blah, blah. But here, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to my ladies. So if you're one of those people who's heard this or that from some dude somewhere, just probably guess that he probably, is just thinking about the usual calories in, calories out equation and just being a dude. So it's really important to know that, like, physiologically, when you've existed at that mass for so long, it actually fights getting smaller faster. So some people, especially like males who have higher testosterone naturally, as they, weight lift or kickbox or whatever, and start to stimulate more testosterone, having those higher androgenic hormones helps them lose fat faster, and they don't really have to battle as much with estrogen and progesterone and having a cycle and la la la, because they're dudes. And that's why dudes can lose fat so much faster than females 99% of the time. Like, I trained a ton of couples my entire career, and the males constantly, rapidly make progress in building muscle and losing fat simultaneously, and the females might move like 5 pounds in like 5 months. It's so hard to, make sure that they don't have the mindset thing go wrong where they're just like, but my husband and this or that. And, of course, because like even for me, like my fiance, when he's been working out lately, he's just made a perfect, beautiful body recomp in like 3 months. And I've literally lost like 1 pound of fat. I mean, I'm not trying super hard because I'm just going about it like in a healthier route. But at the same time, like, it's frustrating, guys. It's frustrating. So don't sleep on the differences physiologically in our hormones. But a lot of people will argue that, like, oh, okay, well, this guy did that. I'm like, yeah, because he's a guy. So if you're a female and you've been comparing yourself against something, or maybe you've been trying to lose fat and your body has, like, you felt so hungry like 3 weeks into your diet, that is usually why. And it's really tough and it's really complicated. And a lot of obesity specialist doctors will recognize this stuff, especially as we've had a lot more studies done on it. So you don't have to look too hard to find that conversation now in the scientific literature. It's there, and it was fascinating for me to learn several years ago. Like, I think I first was brought to my attention on like a New York Times article that a client had sent me. And then I just started to like deep dive into it because I'm like, this is amazing, because we're actually getting to better understand the nuance to morbid obesity bodies, because it's changed, it's different. So if you're somebody who feels like every time you've tried to lose fat and stuff and you can't, or you get sabotaged or whatever, it's actually physiologically a thing. Like, it's really different than just the average person who is only like 20 pounds overweight and can just put their mind to it and get into a new routine. It's going to be different for you and them. So taking that concept and bringing it back to this argument that literally one of my clients' practitioners even told her, that using semaglutides is stealing from diabetics, is super, there's got to be a really good, eloquent term for it, but I can't think of it right now. But it is also like, it's just kind of blatantly wrong, because it's looking at sort of a biased scope, because majority of diabetics using semaglutides are type 2 diabetics. Okay, this means that it was brought on by lifestyle, which I know firsthand that through many studies, of course, too, type 2 diabetes can be absolutely reversed. I've literally seen it with several of my diabetic clients, and it's definitely absolutely manageable through diet and lifestyle alone. Like, for example, the keto diet is extremely effective for type 2 diabetics, getting them into a healthy A1C zone and getting them off meds like metformin and stuff. Anybody who is above the 45% body fat zone, you are in a situation where there's a lot more risk of disease and other complications. And so therefore, like, you are no different than a person dealing with like diabetes as a disease, because they're struggling with insulin resistance and such, but they could also make lifestyle changes to manage it. Nobody should ever need a medication if it is a lifestyle related disease. Type 1 diabetics, that's a different situation. It's autoimmune and such. You're born with it, all that stuff. Not talking about type 1. Type 2, though, saying that, which is the dominating group that's using semaglutides, you saying that you're stealing it or making it harder for diabetics to get that med, is they're kind of in an equal camp. Just because we have a rampant amount in the United States of diabetics, which a lot of people are undiagnosed diabetics or pre-diabetics, which typically, again, like if you're PCOS, you are pre-diabetic because it's an insulin resistance problem. So you kind of technically are in that same zone. You're not going to be any different from them. But being a diabetic is a challenge that you are also having a challenge with your health. They're both life-threatening health challenges, okay? And most of the time, type 2 diabetics that can't get their stuff together and are typically just taking pharmaceuticals are the ones who are not willing to make lifestyle changes. So if you're thinking about utilizing Ozempic and stuff and you don't want to make the lifestyle changes for the long term, that would be something that I would consider to not take, because you should not be dependent on a medication the rest of your life. And you definitely do not need to be on a semaglutide for the rest of your life, especially after you've moved an amount of body fat that gets you into a position to lead a healthier lifestyle. Okay. And so this conversation is more for that person. This is less for the person who just wants to take it and exist managing their lifestyle habits with a medication. Okay. I am not a huge fan of just leaning on medications for the rest of your life. It's a pretty lazy route in the sense that it's not sustainable for life. And it, of course, is going to come with risks and adverse situations in the future. But short term meaning like 5 years or less, absolutely think that you can manage and make some great progress. Okay. So I kind of want to end that little bit because I really have been frustrated when I've heard certain people use that as an excuse. I think it's a really easy way for people to just like shame other people, because it's like, look, most diabetics, type 2 diabetics, made lifestyle choices that got them to where they are now. That might trigger some people, but it's just straight up what is the thing. My entire life, my entire passion for nutrition came about because my grandfather made lifestyle choices with his food his entire life that ultimately caused him to die from type 2 diabetes. My grandma had countless conversations with him, yelling at him and all this different stuff, like, why won't you just make these changes? And there was a lot of different reasons, but ultimately he didn't make the changes. Okay. And so he chose that route. So it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, it's so sad he died from type 2 diabetes and it just happened to him. No, he chose that route. And I love him to death. And he was the reason I got into this industry. But ultimately, I can recognize, especially because of everybody that I've experienced in life who has type 2 diabetes, that it was a lifestyle choice. So you can't necessarily just write off diabetics like they magically got hit with a fairy wand and Tinkerbell was like, you're diabetic and you're diabetic. Was that like Oprah? Tinkerbell and Oprah combined in one? Which Oprah is actually kind of a funny thing because of the Ozempic conversation. But we're not going to talk about that right now. But I will say that when you are thinking about comparing that, or if you are somebody who has said like, who has shamed other people, like, I can't believe you're using that med, diabetics need it, there's a shortage now because of all these people using it for vanity reasons. No, not everyone's using it for vanity reasons. And even if part of it is vanity, it's also something that is just a social and health forward situation. It's not as easy as just like you're just trying to look skinny. It's also like you're trying to manage your disease prevention or risk in the future. You're trying to help your joints. You're trying to help your heart health. You're trying to become fertile so you can start a family. There's a lot of different reasons people do it. And a lot of people may focus on the outward sign because look, a lot of people who have been over 45% body fat have never existed in a healthy sized body. They don't know what they look like when they're in that body type. So, of course, if they get excited and start showing off their body and feeling more confident and whatever, of course they're allowed to do that. Of course, you're allowed to feel better for yourself because you're existing differently than you ever have before. And maybe you're finally feeling more confidence and you're finally able to access a little more self-love, and maybe that spurs you on to making better lifestyle choices. There's so many things that actually can come of it. So don't shame other people for just quote unquote stealing these meds from diabetics for vanity reasons, because trust me, it's a lot more than just vanity reasons. Like if you do the Kim Kardashian thing, that's vanity reasons. But if you're somebody who, I keep calling it the 45 fat zone, if you've been up above that percentage, like you have always not existed in a healthy body fat percentage, in a healthy body for that matter. You know what I mean? And so again, yeah, there's a lot of things that I could go on that topic forever, but I hope if anything you got an understanding of what I mean by it's not just about diabetics anymore, because there's been so many medications that were originally created for one thing and then they discovered it does great things for a lot of other things. There's so many other pharmaceuticals. I don't want to talk about those because that's not today's topic, but that's just straight up what happens in the pharmaceutical world. And everybody knows Kales doesn't support big pharma, but this conversation is one that's important because right now this is a topic that is just everywhere right now. And I want to make sure that I can say a little bit about my thoughts and a little bit of the coaching that I've had one-on-one with people in real life, that maybe it resonates with you. All right, so now that I've gotten to say that part, let's get into a little bit more of the heart-to-heart side of this conversation that I really wanted to have. So I kind of a little bit touched on it in some of what I was just saying above, but even to a deeper extent, there are so many things that probably combined, a confluence of things, if you will, that have created where you are now, okay? And a lot of this is many things could be absolutely out of your control. The amount of morbid obese clients I've had in the past that had a trauma response to very inappropriate sexual abuse as children is really high. Okay. A lot of people don't understand that it's a really common female trauma response to put on protective gear, quote unquote, in the form of body fat when they've been violated. And again, maybe a little trigger warning that, like I said in the beginning of this is going to get deep, but there's conversations that need to be had publicly. We can't keep some of this stuff silent and only discussed like in small groups or only one-on-one. This is a really, really important conversation because maybe that's when something started for you. Not necessarily that example. That's a little bit of a more harsh example. Sometimes it's just emotional trauma with family. Maybe it's drama, maybe it's nothing that's actually trauma related. And it's just cultural traditions. Like for the Filipino side of my life, everybody's like, get seconds. You didn't have seconds. You didn't want more. You didn't like that. You didn't finish that. Why aren't you finishing your plate? Oh my gosh, you finished your plate. The amount of like social drama that comes around food, for Asian families especially, and even with my like Latina clients and my Black clients and what else, there's just Colombian, there's just so many there's so many different cultures where just finishing your plate or getting seconds like is like pushed upon you as a child, and they typically like don't care until you get to a larger size, and then they say, oh my gosh, you're too fat, is always what the Filipinos say. So it's like you're too skinny, and then you're too fat. And so it's like really tough conversation when you realize it for yourself that like, did you bring those things into your adulthood? Like, did you just constantly overeat because you were never taught portion sizes as a child? There's a lot of things, and you're with the fact that once you've existed in that larger body, like I was saying before, and your homeostasis is kind of like jamming at that size, and then you try to start losing fat, and then you yo-yo back and forth, it's tough. It's really tough to be able to actually make progress long term. And so many times it's come to the crossroads where very clearly, like, no matter how much healing inner work you do on whatever is the root cause of this or whatnot, it's physiologically and psychologically exhausting to finally move 100 pounds of body fat. Like, if you're somebody who's been existing at 5'5" and you've been 250 pounds for most of your adulthood, losing roughly 80 to 100 pounds to get to a healthy body weight is so hard. And it's so disheartening. And you feel a lot of shame because a lot of people are going to be judging you and saying this or that about you. Your whole life, you're kind of just put in a different situation where you're going out with a group of your friends and you're the biggest girl, and it's very interesting. And I've been there to some extent, not to a full extent, but I've had very close people to me, like, intimately tell me how that feels or what that existence is like. And it's almost a little bit challenging because I think not everyone can really understand just what that feels like, but you should be able to imagine what that feels like. And if that's you who's listening to this, this is where I can imagine it's extremely enticing to consider a semaglutide, And I would also say that absolutely, I would support you for considering or actually just trying a semaglutide to see if you could get yourself into a healthier body fat percentage for once, because all of that existence is really hard, and it's really challenging to explain that to everyone. But again, you don't have to explain any of that stuff to anyone. But I just want to say that, like, I hear you and I see you, and I know that this is why you are very heavily considering, or maybe you have started to take it because you don't want to exist in that space anymore. You know what I mean? And that's really important that you honor that feeling, because if this is sort of a miracle drug for you finally to actually move the needle in a faster amount of time, then that's great. Like, that's ideal. Okay. But with that all said, a really common question that I've had to have the conversation with people about, that I think might be important for you if this is something that you've been thinking about, is weighing the side effects and the risks. So a lot of these people that I've talked to about it and whatnot have felt really scared of the potential side effects. The backed up intestines, pancreatic cancer, thyroid cancer, yada, yada. But if that's you, or maybe somebody that you've talked to in your life who sounds similar to anything that I've just been talking about for the last 40 minutes, here's something really real to consider when you're weighing your options. So I strongly consider you honestly look at your situation and ask yourself these questions. Am I able to stick to a consistent diet and exercise routine to long-term stimulate sustainable fat loss? Have I actually made good progress the times I've done it the right way, quote unquote, and followed the usual move more, eat less? Have I worked through the emotional components behind anything that might be influencing my overeating? And is it working? Do I actually think I will make significant progress in a few years compared to what I've tried in the past? And here's the heavy hitter. Will staying at my current weight and yo-yo dieting with my body fat percentage also lead me down the same road of disease, cancer, or more, regardless of if I try a semaglutide? Oof, that last one, right? It's such a big mood. It might be the realest question you can ask yourself when looking to make the decision of trying the medication or not. Will staying at your current body fat percentage lead you down the same road to disease, cancer, or more anyways, right? And that's where I encourage you to truly get radically honest with yourself when answering that question. Because if you didn't do anything, if you are able to utilize insurance and get a prescription and be monitored by your practitioner and do it the healthiest, safest way possible, if you don't do that and you have that option and you're considering it, or maybe if you have the cash to do it out of pocket and you just exist the way you are, you will deal with disease, cancer is a disease, I suppose, or more, you know? And being radically honest with yourself on that one is so important, because are you avoiding trying it because people have scared you, or maybe you've scared yourself because of the side effects or whatnot? But also, you should recognize that staying in a body that's above 45 to 50% body fat, it's a given you will struggle with a higher risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancers, osteoarthritis, sleep apnea, and a ton of other complications. You will. So when you weigh those two things, being afraid of some potential side effects that typically usually happen for people who are very unhealthy and are maybe in the 50 years old plus zone, that is where maybe being concerned about the side effects has more weight. Not really pun intended, but it is pun intended. But at the same time, just remembering that you not trying something like this and being in that body fat percentage zone does look like a ton of health complications in your near future. And I'm talking like if you're in your 20s, 30s, early 40s and listening to this and considering using a semaglutide, you will start to see those things if you have not already in your 50s or 60s. And I'm not saying any of this stuff to be like fear mongering. And I'm obviously not getting kickbacks from this medication. I'm just being real with you. These are things that you have to consider, because for me, I don't want those closest to me who are going to try this med or thinking about it or whatever to have those complications later in life. So I'm totally cheerleading them with trying it, because you have less to lose by trying it for half a year, 1 year, 2 years maybe, than you do not doing anything at all, So it's really important too, like I was just saying, you actually can use the medication to drop substantial fat, and it can help you become more motivated to finally keep up a fitness routine, cook healthier and make healthier habits, sleep better, all of that kind of stuff. And then you can cycle off of it. You don't have to keep taking it. I know the pharmaceutical labels and doctors and stuff might say well, you're going to have to take it the rest of your life. No, that's just the label that those companies have on it, because they want people taking it forever, because that's constant income for them. So you can come off of it whenever you want. Even if you are on it and you don't feel good at all and you really don't like it and it's not working for you after 3 months, yeah, get off of it. Whatever. You tried. You know what I mean? But I'm coming from experience. I've seen clients utilize the med to move a chunk of fat and then maintain their fitness routines and eat better and feel better in their clothes. Really does make a difference with keeping up with a fitness routine. You feel more motivated, you feel less judgmental about your body, and you may feel a lot more momentum to stay on top of things. You know what I mean? But like I was saying, those are really big considerations to have, because I feel like those are questions or things that people are just not talking about. And it's really, really, really important for you to think about all those questions I asked and consider what your answers are going to be. And again, just be really radically honest with yourself about it, okay? Because it's really important to just do the inner exploration. I think especially with anything like this, and societally and just health-wise, your body fat percentage does play such a big role in a lot of different areas in your life. So I absolutely understand why so many people are running to this medication. But again, I do not think anyone should run to this medication and not make any lifestyle changes at all. That is just really not a ideal scenario. I know it's ideal for those types of personalities, but I would really encourage you to utilize this med as an opportunity to get your life back, get off the med, and shift gears into the healthier lifestyle that you want to have so that you can change the trajectory of your health for the long term. All right. All right, so there's one last thing I want to say, and this might be, if that wasn't a big mood, this is going to be a really big mood for you listening right now, because I think that this is a topic or maybe a truth that is like hardly discussed at all. At least I haven't heard it at all. Maybe if you've heard it from somebody else, forward me that conversation or podcast or something like that, because I'd love to hear other people's takes on it. But I'm gonna say something absolutely wild. Because it's a hella bold topic, and I'm just gonna be keeping it real like always. So all right, here it is. Some people, especially some of those closest to you, will not be supportive of you losing a significant amount of weight. If for a second you're like, why would anyone close to you feel that way? Or some of you are like, ain't that the truth? Okay. Because there is what I've deduced it down to observationally. I'd love to hear your other thoughts if you have any. But DM me on my @KayleeLoren on Instagram if you have some thoughts on this, or if this like resonates with you. I love to have that validation, because this was super valid for several people I've talked to about this. There is an innate social superiority situation that are reasons that people may not be supportive of you utilizing Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, any of the semaglutides, because deep down in their ego, they need to maintain superiority over you. This is really like, this almost gets a little philosophical. It's a lot of like social psychology kind of stuff, but it's for real. Like, especially women to women. It's really dominantly women to women. People will mask their possible jealousy or just desire for you not to succeed physically in something that could put them in a position where they are socially equal to you, or maybe lesser equal than you. You know what I mean? By saying, I just really am concerned about your health. Like, the side effects are so scary. Like, I just really don't want you to do it. I think it's really dangerous, blah, 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 blah. This is going to be hard. You're going to have to like really observe and dissect this individually for yourself with the conversations you have. But do know that not all conversations that sound like that are looking for your best interest. It's going to be masked to look like it's for your best interest, but in reality, it's just women doing the competitive women thing and not wanting you to do better than them, okay? And weight loss or body conversations in general are the most triggering things person to person for like intrapersonal relationships. People are constantly comparing themselves and making themselves out to be superior or inferior based off of physical appearance. It's just nature, okay? It is really rare to find somebody that has no ego and does not compare to anyone and is massively fully self-aware and entirely dedicated to no judgment or comparison. That is so rare. Maybe like a monk in Thailand might be at that level. But for most people, most average, even your mothers, grandmothers, aunts, sisters, best friends, all of these people might expose some of their wounds or like icky parts of their ego that hasn't healed yet through either straight up saying, you shouldn't do that, like blah, 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 this or that, or this the whole thing of like, oh, that's for diabetics, you're stealing from diabetics, or just shameful things, pushing shame on you, or maybe just straight up doing that thing where they're kind of masking concern when in reality they just ultimately don't want you to do better. Unfortunately, that is a just super massive thing that even like male to male, male to female, any relationship, person to person, people do this thing. Like, I will never forget how icky I felt hearing one of my old friends in college write off this other girl that her ex started dating, saying essentially, well, at least I'm skinnier and smaller than her, so AKA, because I'm smaller and skinnier than her, I'm better than her, I'm prettier than her, whatever. Superiority, like I was saying. And it's super it's super icky, when I'm calling it out. It's like you're probably like, I know exactly what you mean, and like I don't want to believe that that's like actually what so and so saying these things to me was meaning. Like, I want to believe that they really have my best interest at heart. But in reality, if they have your best interest at heart, they'll listen to your whys. They'll listen and see what you mean and why, and your struggles and your challenges, and what you getting into a healthier body fat percentage actually means for you and your life in the long term. And they'll be supportive of whatever decision you make. It's not their decision, okay? So it's so important when it comes down to it at the end of the day. This decision is the only you can make it for yourself. It doesn't matter what other people think, because they aren't living in your body. They won't have to deal with whatever's going to happen to your vessel if you stay in that same body fat percentage the rest of your life. So if you want to go about this journey with less judgment and less noise of other people's thoughts or opinions or this or that, keep this decision to yourself. If you're with a partner and you have a committed long-term relationship, of course involve them. Their opinion does matter. Hopefully they will be with you the rest of your life. Or maybe tell a parent or two if that really meant something to you, to have that support and that they'd be supportive, whatever it is. But ultimately, regardless, don't make any decisions that aren't your own, and don't be fearful of things just because so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so all said these different things, when in reality, they may not have your best interest in hand. You have to make the decision that is right for you, explore it all for yourself, think about those questions I asked you, and choose based upon that. Okay? Trust yourself. So again, this whole chat is for those who are non-diabetic, who have been existing at about 45% body fat or more for years now, and potentially for those that fit in the category who are working through PCOS and all that kind of stuff. I just really hope that you think about everything I'm talking about. And I know that some of this had to resonate if you are somebody who has been really weighing your options of whether or not to try Ozempic or any of the semaglutides. And I know a lot of you might be kind of surprised that I'm having this take on this medication, but I have seen the power of how this can absolutely change a lot of people's lives and trajectories for the better. There are aspects of it that are quite miraculous in some ways. And it's not as black and white as people are making it out to be, which is why, I've adapted my opinions on it. I wanted to share these opinions and thoughts with you because these conversations have been game changers in my personal life and professional life, and there's a lot of things that we have to open our mind to and explore. All right, so I know that was a real big, long, juicy chat, but I just had to have a little heart to heart with you and make sure that these conversations were had in a public space that you can observe and digest and think through on your own. I think this discussion is really important because a lot of people just tend to write off body fat and just your mass in general as, your social status or a whole lot of things. But when it comes from the health perspective, which is what I think of, I completely see it from a different lens where not only physically could you become healthier in the long term, temporarily using a medication like this, but you can also mentally get into a healthier position to recommit to your health and reacquaint yourself with yourself, yourself and your soul and your spirit and whatever. So I think that this is much more than just a vanity medication for those who are not diabetic. I think that this has a lot of different angles to it that are valuable and need to be considered for your decisions on whatever you decide to do. But I would definitely want you to make sure that you make the choice that feels most right to you. So again, I'm not saying, yes, go do it if you just fit all of these things, but I'm saying if that feels right to you, then I support you. You know what I mean? All right, Rebel, that's it for today's episode. Share this episode to your Instagram story or send it to your bestie or somebody who you think needs to hear it. I know this was a really real conversation, and I hope you enjoyed it because I enjoyed sharing it. As always, celebrate your strength and nourishment, walk with confidence, and I will catch you next week on another episode of Rebel Wellness. Hey Rebel, I just want to say a huge thank you for tuning in and sharing this space with us. Before we sign off, I've got some exciting ways for you to stay connected and to take your wellness journey even further with me. First up, if you haven't already, make sure to swing by coachkales.com and sign up for our newsletter. It's your go-to source for the latest episodes, exclusive content, and a whole lot more wellness goodness delivered straight to your inbox. Check out the show notes for those high-quality tips on nutrition, fitness, and just overall well-being. Follow us on Instagram at Rebel Wellness Podcast and my flagship page at Kaylee Loren. We're all about building a community where we can share, inspire, and grow together. So I would love to see you there. Now, if you're looking to reset and realign after a vacation, a hectic work season, or just because you feel like it's time for a healthful cleanse, I've got something super special for you, and it's 100% free. Head over to stan.store/kales and download my free realignment detox guide. You can also find it at coachkale.com in the freebies section. I'm sharing my unique holistic approach to help you cut back inflammation, improve your skin, and even shed some excess weight with this guide. So trust me, you're gonna love it. Go download it for free now. But last but not certainly least, if you've got a burning health question you'd like answered on the show, or if you're curious about my one-on-one remote coaching or group courses, don't hesitate to visit my website and reach out to me there, or hello@kayleeloren.com is my best email for contacting me. I am here to support you on your journey to wellness, so do not feel afraid to reach out. All right, Rebel, catch you on the next episode.